One, audio test for the captioner, audio test.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the October 15th, 2025 Urban Renewal Agency meeting and City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this virtual meeting format. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment, and those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meetings materials page of the City of Eugene website. Thank you again for joining us. I now call the October 15th, 2025 Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order, and I will turn it over to the Assistant Agency Director to introduce our first topic, a work session on the North Butterfly Lot Development Team Selection.
Thank you, Mayor. Our team in community development is excited to provide you with an update on the North Butterfly Lot and the next steps in developing the site. And as you know, this is part of our efforts to increase the supply of housing in the downtown core. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our downtown manager, Eric Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Eric Brown. I am the downtown manager in the Community Development Division here at the City of Eugene. I'm joined by Amanda D'Souza, who is also here. She is our Development Programs Manager and also in the Community Development Division. We are here today at a significant milestone in our efforts to encourage development of housing downtown, having run a successful request for qualifications for the North Butterfly Lot. The purpose of today's meeting is to share an overview of the request for qualifications process and to request agency board direction on the next steps in the project. But before we do that, I want to spend just a few minutes reviewing the city's downtown core housing initiative and the opportunity presented by the North Butterfly Lot. I hope that this will provide a useful framework for your discussion today and allow members of the public who are tuning in to catch up if they're just joining this process. So over the past 2 years, City Council and the agency board have taken a number of steps to support the development of housing in the downtown core. First, you amended the downtown and riverfront urban renewal plans to allow for property acquisition and disposition for housing. Then you established 2 new incentive programs, Downtown Fee Assistance and the Accelerated Multi-Unit Property Tax Exemption, or MUPT, within the downtown core. These were important steps that demonstrate your commitment to building housing at the heart of our community. The focus on downtown housing is grounded in multiple city plans and policies. I won't read you this slide aloud, but suffice to say that housing affordability, downtown vibrancy, and climate change can all be positively impacted by enabling more people to live at the heart of our community, where they have easy access to shops, services, jobs, and entertainment, all by foot, bike, or transit. Our plans and policies speak to those benefits. As a shovel-ready site at the threshold of the downtown core and the Market District, the North Butterfly Lot is particularly well positioned to deliver those benefits. And we are excited to bring this location forward as a first project in the downtown core housing initiative. As a reminder, the North Butterfly Lot is a half-acre site immediately north of the new Farmers Market Pavilion. It's currently a gravel parking lot, a temporary gravel parking lot, and it's zoned C3, our highest intensity commercial zone. The zoning allows for a high-density mixed-use building. It's only a block away from the Gordon Hotel in the Market District to the north, and a half block from the park blocks to the south. In addition to those immediate adjacencies, the North Butterfly Lot is less than a 15-minute walk from many downtown amenities, including the Holtz Center, the Downtown Library, Amtrak and LTD stations, 2 grocery stores, and multiple entertainment venues. I want to underscore this site's location at the threshold between the downtown core and the market district. This is an important project that can serve to connect these activity centers within our downtown core, which is a key redevelopment strategy to bring positive activity downtown. So a reminder of the goals for this project. With the community-wide needs that I mentioned earlier and the site-specific opportunities in mind, you endorse the following 4 goals for the project. The first goal is to build a vertically mixed-use building, including high-density housing in the downtown core. The second goal is to create an active ground floor that complements and expands the atmosphere of the Farmers Market Pavilion and Plaza. Thirdly, a third goal is to enhance pedestrian connectivity between the core of downtown, the Market District, leading to the riverfront. And finally, a fourth goal is to frame the park blocks with a substantial, high-quality building contributing to a broader sense of place in a key downtown destination. These goals informed the request for qualifications, which Amanda is going to walk you all through.
Thanks, Eric. As a refresher, in April, you approved a disposition process and criteria designed to result in a project that achieves the goals Eric just covered. The approved process started with a request for qualifications, or RFQ. The full document is in attachment C. It required a statement of interest and preliminary vision, but the criteria and the scoring rubric more heavily weighted the development team's experience with similar urban mixed-use projects, the inclusion of design professionals on the team, and evidence of financial capacity to deliver on complex projects. The RFQ also assigned points for preferred but not required elements, such as demonstrated commitment to the use of local contractors or minority-owned businesses, creative partnerships with Lane County Farmers Market or other community organizations, and a handful of community benefits as part of the vision. The desired outcome for the RFQ process was to establish a pool of qualified development teams from which you, the agency board, would select the preferred team that would be invited to prepare a full proposal for the site. The purpose of the qualified pool is to ensure the agency has alternative teams to work with should the project not move forward with the selected team. I'll briefly touch on what steps have happened since we spoke to you in April. After you approved the disposition process and criteria, the RFQ was launched in late May. It was open for about 2 months with responses due at the end of July. An evaluation committee scored the submissions and made the recommendations, which I'll touch on in a bit. And today you're asked to consider taking action to select a preferred development team and approve a qualified pool for redevelopment. We're pleased to share that we received 4 submissions to the RFQ. The responses were from Paradigm Properties, PPP UHD, which stands for the Public-Private Partnership of Urban and Human Diversity, Obie Companies, and Gorman and Company. I won't dig into all 4 in detail for this presentation, but the full submissions are included in attachments D through G, and we've also provided a summary of the submissions in attachment H. We convened an evaluation committee to review and score all 4 responses. The 10-person committee consisted of a mix of downtown stakeholders, partners, city staff, and the Ward 1 city councilor. A list of members is included in attachment I. The committee met 3 times to discuss the submissions, and they scored the responses based on the criteria approved by you. The committee was asked to make 2 recommendations, which reflect the decision you're asked to consider today. The first is a recommendation for who should be in the qualified pool, and second, which team they recommended as the preferred team for moving forward in the process. Overall, the committee was very pleased with the quality of all 4 submissions. They recommended that 3 of the teams, Paradigm, Obie, and Gorman, be included in the qualified pool, and that Paradigm Properties be selected as the preferred team. Paradigm ranked highest, and I'll talk about them in a moment. But before that, I want to highlight some of the reasons why the committee felt that Obie and Gorman should be in the qualified pool. Gorman and Company is a national firm generally focused on affordable housing. They demonstrated they have lots of experience in delivering on a variety of project types, and the committee appreciated the partnership with local companies as part of the submission. For OB companies, the committee noted they have a strong local reputation for delivering good quality buildings. They continue to make investments in downtown Eugene, worked with multiple communities across the West, and other communities have even sought them out based on the reputation they've built here. The committee felt both teams demonstrated they had the experience to take on this type of project and should be included in the qualified pool. Finally, the committee appreciated the visionary and equity-driven lens the fourth team, PPP UHG, brought to their submission. However, they felt that the team lacked practical developmental experience at this time and did not recommend they be included in the qualified pool. Since the evaluation committee recommended Paradigm, I'll highlight some key aspects of their submission. The key members of this team include Dan Neal, Dustred Architecture, Michael Fifield, an urban design consultant, Doherty Landscape Architects, Carol Shermer, KPFF, and Hobach Lewin. The committee appreciated that Paradigm is a local team with a strong track record and good reputation for working in Eugene for many years. The consultants they brought on are well known locally for their great work, and the committee appreciated the inclusion of an urban designer and architect on their team. They've demonstrated they can do a variety of project types, including high-quality urban projects like those shown here. In particular, the Midtown, the top photo, stood out as a good example of how Paradigm can approach a project with creativity and partnership. The committee felt the team demonstrated their passion for the committee and commitment to downtown revitalization, and that they were well suited to partner with the agency. Should you choose to select a preferred team today, we've moved into the proposal development phase in partnership with the development team. This will include refining project details like the number and size of units, the project design, and estimates of construction costs. It's at this stage we'll start to work with the team to determine which community benefits the project would include, such as elevated green building standards, whether units would be income qualified, and what type of uses could be on the ground floor. Connected to the discussion about community benefit, we'd also start to explore what type of public investment they anticipate needing to make this project financially feasible, such as an accelerated MUPD, downtown fee assistance, reduced property cost, or other urban renewal support. During the proposal phase, we'd also solicit community feedback on the proposal and start to draft deal points for agency board consideration. Since you're probably wondering what the parameters of the proposal will be, I'll remind you of the preferred elements of the project vision that were included in the approved criteria. This included active and pedestrian-oriented edges, 80 or more units of housing, and reduced reliance on fossil fuels. These will be the starting point for the proposal development phase. If you provide direction today on moving forward with one of the teams, this is what potential next steps look like. First, we'll partner with the team as they start developing the proposal, which I just covered. As part of the proposal development, we'll work with the team to solicit community feedback on the proposed project. The agency board will consider the full project proposal and approval of deal points for the project. If the agency board chooses to approve deal points, we then execute a development agreement with the team. We anticipate public investment will be needed to make a project on this site financially feasible. The agency will consider some of these elements as part of the deal points and some later on in the development process, such as an anticipated accelerated MUPD application. I'll end on a reminder that the option you're considering today consists of 2 steps: approving a qualified pool and selecting the preferred team that will partner with the agency to prepare a full proposal. With that, we'll hand it back to the mayor for discussion, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that presentation and update on a very exciting project for our community. I'll now open the floor to council discussion and see Councilor Leach.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the staff. That our RFQ was really well done, and I've been so excited to see what proposals would come in for this. And I want to also thank the committee that met several times to score and evaluate this and help us come to a decision. Something that wasn't said that I noted in the scoring kind of committee's notes. And something I do agree with is that they were concerned that Paradigm was going to be unable to meet the character and quality that we are looking for in this particular location. And looking at their kind of entire portfolio of work, I do see that their aesthetic is very consistent, and it's not bad by any means. But I am concerned that that aesthetic and everything that they've put in their proposal indicates that that would be also consistent with this project based on the materials that they're proposing to use and the facade kind of. And so I'm also a little bit concerned about their proposal of, I mean, I appreciate their willingness to work with the farmers market, but their proposal states that they are happy to put in like market offices and storage space for the vendors and incubator space. And I think that's a really cool use, but I don't know if it's the best use. And so when I think about who in our community has had very, very high levels of success in mixed use retail, I do think of OB companies. And I would love to be able to see a full proposal from them as well. And I don't know how that might work to request maybe both companies submitting something that would give us a little bit more of what their vision is for how this looks. And maybe that's not possible, but those are just my initial thoughts.
Councillor Kaczynski. Councillor, we can't hear you. Thank you.
I lowered my hand as opposed to unmuting myself. So I just also wanted to echo the thanks to the staff for the RFP and the work that you've put into this, and to the evaluation committee. The evaluation committee had some very in-depth discussions, went back and got more information. Staff went back and got more information, and I feel like it was a really, really robust discussion. I will say that one of the concerns that came, and staff, if I am misstating the vibes of the committee, please interject and stop me. I will say that one of the concerns that came up with the OB company's proposal in particular was the inclusion of hotel hospitality as part of the proposal. So I believe one of the reasons why it scored as low, like lower than the others, is because there was a sense that that was not really part of the vision that we were looking for that space, to have a hotel there. And when I believe we did follow up with that question. But I will also say that, you know, it was close. We had a number of really qualified applicants, which was great. So thank you.
Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too want to thank staff for this work. I think this is a very important site, very important addition to the downtown, and also as a connector back to the Market District. Thank you to the committee that reviewed these proposals, and I want to send a thank you to those who submitted proposals. I mean, that's a big step in getting the right thing for our community. Councillor Kaczynski, thank you for giving a little more information on why the committee kind of went in a certain direction. My initial thought was much along the same lines as Councillor Leach. Although, you know, they're certainly adequate as far as aesthetics and appearance goes. I think we've seen some buildings erected both in the Market District and the riverfront that are truly stunning to look at and visually pleasing, and I think really add a lot to the community. A question I have is, do we have an idea of height, what that many units would do in a half-block site? How tall would the building have to be to accommodate that? How many stories?
I can jump in, and Amanda, feel free to, or Will and Anne are on here as well. So feel free to jump in if I'm missing anything. The zoning C3, it allows for up to 150 feet of height. 80 units of housing. When we were doing our outreach prior to launching the RFQ, a number of the developers we spoke to thought that it would be like a 5 to 7 story building. And that seems to be in the realm of what pencils for market rate housing. So I think that's what we could anticipate, but those details are yet to come. And so we, hope to dig into that kind of exploration as part of the proposal phase.
And I will.
So the 100.
I can just quickly chime in that at least for Paradigm, they estimated 8 to 10 stories, 90 to 120 units, but obviously that's very preliminary and there's a lot of details to work out, but that is what they included in their vision statement.
Thank you. That's helpful. So for sure, our 150-foot level would be adequate then for what they need to do.
Yeah.
I just don't have a good sense how many units you can fit on a floor like that. And then another point I had, which wouldn't be the responsibility, of course, of the developer, but as we do proceed with this and get a better feel for what this building might look like and the actual number of units in the final proposal, I'm hoping that we're giving some consideration of improving pedestrian crossings from that area to across 7th Avenue, which I think would also be good for the market, or not the market, but the farmers market as well. I still think that's a very dangerous crossing, and I'd really like to see West 6th Avenue improved as well, so we have a better flow between the downtown, the market and downtown. And then, you bring in the riverfront into that as well. I think whatever we can do to promote pedestrian safety and a more beautiful area or defined area of crossing is going to be very important as we move forward. So with that, that's all I have at this time. Thank you very much.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say a big thank you as well to staff and to the committee that worked so hard on this. This is a really important piece of property in our downtown, and it's a really high focus area, and how we develop it, I think, is important. My question was around conversations that I had over time, over the last few years, with people who are in the business of developing projects like this, have all kind of focused around the fact that housing in our downtown literally hasn't been built in a really long time for a number of reasons, and we can debate all of that. But one of the chief roadblocks that brought up was kind of the cost of money issue right now, and I'm wondering what part we had discussed on several occasions, the idea of creating a lower rate or a zero rate capacity to borrow money by using the taxing district for such a project such as this. Was that a part of the discussion? If so, how serious is that as a future consideration? And I think I'm asking Anne, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I think this is an Anne question.
And it wasn't that clear a question, so I'll make it easier if you want, but.
I actually guess that Eric and Amanda could answer it as well. We have a business loan program that's exclusive to the Downtown Urban Renewal District. Right now, that loan program has about $4 million that we could lend to anyone, and it would be entirely appropriate to apply it to this project. There's been interest in maybe a larger loan.
Yeah.
It's a challenging, we've looked into it. We don't have a solution at this point. Right now, the loan fund is capitalized with so-called program revenue, which is not property tax income. It's the income that comes to the district if we sell land or sell something like that. And the downtown district is not legally allowed to use tax increment revenue to capitalize the loan fund. So we haven't yet to, at this point, we haven't identified an alternative solution. So the existing loan fund is the primary tool that we would have.
And state law limits the district's ability to create a loan fund. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
No, it was a judicial decision exclusive to our, I think, I can't remember, and I would hate to step in on the city attorney's office now. It's either this district or Lane County. It was a Lane County decision, not state law.
Well, and maybe I can follow up with the city attorney later to get more explanation and understanding of that. But I just wondered if that was a part of this discussion as well, but it sounds like it was not because of the nature of a previous decision.
Well, I think also it would be part of the proposal development phase when we figure out what sort of government support is needed to make the proposed project viable. So I think it's at a later phase that we would identify a low interest loan as a required component of their capital stack.
Is that a possibility as we move forward? How real a possibility under the circumstances of the restrict in the Lane County application of the law?
I think I think that this whole project will take some creative solutions to identify in their capital stack and the financing. And I think we'll have to be part of the proposal stage as we identify those different potential solutions. And that one it's part of the conversation, but it's too, we don't have much to react to at this point.
Okay.
But it's definitely on everybody's radar screen about as one potential tool to get the project out of the ground.
It seems like an important one. That's why I bring it up. It seems like it's been a kind of a gate holding position issue in previous conversations I've had. So I just wonder how important that is and if it's part of this discussion. So thank you.
I have Councilor Zelenka and Councilor Ye, and I've added myself to the queue for the end of round one, and then we'll move to round two, though we might need to move to a shorter period of time with a second agenda item that we also have that we'll need to move to in about 15 minutes. Councilor Zelenka.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought the process was very thorough. I appreciate that. I very much appreciate all the staff work that's gone into this and the evaluation committee's work. 10 meetings and all the different work that they did and the thought they put into this and the investigation they do. I very much appreciate that. And so, and that makes me feel very comfortable with, and I agree with the recommendation. I've seen the development that Paradigm has done. It's high quality, and they also bring a local presence, which makes me feel a lot more comfortable. I thought that their proposal was the best of the bunch also, and their team is highly qualified, and they bring a lot of interesting perspectives to it, and that will help us get what we really want. And their experience doing this type of project that we want to see happen was very impressive. So all of that said, I really support the proposal to select Paradigm as the preferred firm to work with. Maybe you could summarize again what happens next, beside the financing part, but I'm very interested in maximizing the community or public benefit given this project's location and the import of it. Maybe you could describe what happens next after council vote. Again.
Yeah. So we'll start a conversation with the team, kind of talking through their vision. I think a lot of those community benefits are going to be tied to what type of public investment they need. And so if they're asking for more public investment, then we would want to see more community benefits come up through the project. We anticipate they're going to apply for the accelerated MEPD, and so they'll have to meet all 7 of the public benefits that are included in that program. And so we'll be working through those to see what type of benefits could be financially feasible that results in a project that gets built.
So all that design, all of the public benefits, all that is kind of where we're headed next.
Yeah. And we're looking at it as like a true partnership, like having good conversations with them and working together to put together the right project for both of us.
Right. Especially with determining and defining the community benefit. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe Councilor Zelenka, I could just add that we want to work with the development team to engage community members in the design process and make sure that there's meaningful consultation. We want to hold off on making any commitments as to what that will look like at this point until we've got a team that we're working with and can figure out at what points it's going to be most impactful to have that community input.
Right. And yeah, that's why you have to pick one firm and not have multiples, because all that takes a lot of effort, money, and time. Thanks.
Councillor Ye.
Thanks, Mayor. So I will also echo my colleagues' happiness with the way this process has gone. I really appreciate the group that came together to look at these contracts, and especially that they had questions and they asked them, and they did what they needed to do to get to a decision. And I really appreciate all the time they spent on that. And so I'm very pleased to be able to support their recommendation. It makes a lot of sense, and I think it looks like a good path forward. I will also echo that this is not just any other project in our community. I know we've talked a lot about this, but I want to also voice that I'm expecting this to be something special. I mean, we're not like the most specialist thing of all time, but there needs to be something in here that's different from any other apartment complex if this is the direction we're going in. So it looks like this group has kind of got that message, and they threw some ideas out there, and those may not be the ones that stick. I agree with Councillor Leach. Like, I hope that they keep in mind that while those are great ideas, we may want to take this in a different direction and to be flexible. But the idea that they're already thinking about that is very encouraging. So thank you so much for all the hard work. I know staff has been doing a lot, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Council. I'm going to add myself to this queue, and then for the next round, let's maybe bring our time down to a minute and a half so that we're able to move on to our second agenda item. I also want to express my appreciation to staff and to all of the applicants, the people who took the time to imagine a future for this site in the center of our city, and all of the people who spent time weighing information and really thinking intensively about the potential of this place. This is not just another redevelopment site within our city. It may be the most visible and the most important redevelopment site within our city. It is a destination, it is a place, it's the center of a neighborhood. And I think that the awareness of the teams and of the preferred team that came through in their applications, that awareness for us to continually reiterate that and have that as a focal point of our conversation is important. I'm also very hopeful about, and I'll just share with you a few thoughts, what was mentioned about the threshold nature of this site in our downtown at the edge of the park blocks, but also adjacent to our the Graduate Hotel and a conference center space, the Holt Center for the Performing Arts, what is understood to be the center of our city's arts and culture district with the Shed just also around the corner and down the way. And that relationship also to our commercial centers and all of the activity at the Fifth Street Market and further to the downtown core, a piece of architecture and a building that can speak to that, I think, is really important. And also the challenge of this project will be that design clarity and the quality of the architectural design will be incredibly important to the staying power of this proposal. So I will be really interested to see how those adjacencies and the strengths of them come forward in this discussion and with staff. I will also be very interested to see how the design community is engaged around a question of architectural clarity. The quality of materials questions that have come up in discussion already among this body today, I think are very important because while this is a building that programmatically will be mixed use and as a trajectory towards bringing a lot of new residential energy to our city center, it will also be a landmark. And in that way, its material quality, the durability of those materials, the high performance of the building over time, those will be incredibly important. And I will just end by saying that I really appreciate that the activation of the ground floor and the lower floors of this building was also a focus in in the criteria and discussion among the team. Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just respond a little bit to Councillor Kaczynski and thank you for clarifying kind of that decision from the committee, because this summary had mentioned that the score was lower because they had not chosen a design firm, although in their proposal they actually chose 4 and they were going to choose the correct one based on the collective visioning that after kind of meeting with the community and stakeholders and what was really wanted. But I do agree that maybe a mixed hotel use might not be the best case scenario there. And so I see where we're going and I am supportive of this recommendation. And like Councillor Ye, I would like to just impress upon that desire for the uniqueness and character that like Mayor just mentioned that really is important in a landmark of like this in our core. That we want something that's going to excite us and make us just really happy that it's right there by the farmers market, bringing in tourists and our residents alike. So I really appreciate all of the work that went into this, and I'm excited to see their proposal. Councillor
Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. I forgot to mention this in my first round. But I really think the aspirational goals are important here. I'm glad we're discussing that. But I generally switch pretty quickly to operational considerations and how do we actually get something to come out of the ground. And I have taken it on my own to meet with different developers over time to talk about development in the downtown and what the challenges are. And I consistently hear the lack of space to stage and store materials and equipment, how important it is when you get workers on the ground to keep them working or you lose them, and how you manage a site like this as opposed to like the riverfront where you have plenty of space to store equipment and materials. Same thing is true with the over at the U of O. There's usually a place to store these. There aren't places downtown. I think it would behoove us for not just this, but future developments in the downtown that we identify a space that we could fence, secure, and offer that up as part of the package to incent development in our downtown where materials can be marshaled, stored, staged, and then delivered with day trucks to the site so that everything is choreographed and sequenced so that once construction starts, it can continue. And that way we can kind of deal with some of the supply chain orders that we've been dealing with. Thank you.
Seeing no more discussion in the queue, I will now turn to our agency president to put a motion forward. Councillor Evans, we do not have your audio yet.
I think you do now. Can you hear me?
Go. Thank you. Yes.
All right. Move to approve the pool of qualified teams consisting of Paradigm Properties, OB Companies, and Gorman and Company to direct the agency director to develop a proposal for the North Butterfly lot in partnership with Paradigm Properties.
Second.
Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll now take a vote for this motion. All in favor, please raise your hand or the small little indication 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I think Councillor Evans' hand is raised. Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, sir. And the motion passes with a vote of 8-0. Thank you. I will now close our October 15th, 2025 Urban Renewal Agency meeting and call the October 15th, 2025 City Council work session to order. And with that, turn to our Assistant City Manager to introduce our topic, which is a work session that is an update on our climate action work.
Thank you, Mayor. We have Daniel Klinkabel from our sustainability team here to give you an update on the city's climate action work, some of the achievements over the last year, and emerging opportunities and challenges we're seeing with local climate action work. So I'll hand it over to Danielle.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Matt, can you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing my screen? Okay, great. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Danielle Klinkebell, and I am a climate policy analyst with the city. Just a quick agenda for our discussion. I'll be providing an overview of our climate action work, including our progress and impact thus far, as well as the challenges and opportunities ahead. As a brief overview, in 2016, City Council passed the Climate Recovery Ordinance, establishing goals to reduce fossil fuels and greenhouse gas emissions. There are 2 goals for the Eugene community and 2 goals for city operations. In 2020, Council approved the Climate Action Plan 2.0 as our roadmap for achieving those goals, which outlines a range of actions to reduce emissions from the highest impact areas and to improve community resilience by expanding our capacity to adapt to climate change. I'd like to start with some new tools that we've developed to better showcase this work by making it more engaging, interesting, and accessible. First, we've created a brief 4-page overview of our work to date. This is meant to provide a quick snapshot of our progress and help orient people to the resources and programs that exist. This is attachment A in your AIS. We've also developed a story map in ArcGIS. It's a dynamic annual report that uses videos, maps, photos, stories, and data to share our recent climate action work. Readers can learn about work across different sectors and scroll through at their own pace to understand our progress and impact. And it's also meant to invite folks to join the action. So we include a lot of the resources and programs that give people options to live more sustainably. And then there's our climate dashboard. This is a new evolution of the CAP 2.0 implementation plan. For each CAP 2.0 category, you can learn more about specific key indicators that help us measure our impact. You can also see a status update on every single CAP 2.0 action. And we also have key takeaways from our most recent greenhouse gas inventories. And our GHG inventories are included as attachments D and E. So now I'd like to dive into some of our recent highlights. Transportation is our largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, which we are working to reduce by supporting active transportation, electric vehicles, and compact development. Recent successes in 2024 included completion of many active transportation upgrades, such as improvements to pedestrian crossings, new protected bikeways, better lighting along bike paths, and more. These upgrades also improved livability and quality of life for Eugene residents. The city also leads many behavior change programs. The New Movers program provides resources to new Eugene residents on how to explore the city through biking, walking, and taking the bus. This has been very successful at getting new residents to establish these habits as they settle into Eugene. And finally, compact development helps concentrate housing and services so that people can meet their daily needs without a car. We've introduced new tax incentives and fee assistance programs to support more concentrated development in the downtown core. So measuring gasoline sales is one way to track our impact. Overall, we've seen a slight decline in fuel sales since 2010. There was a sharp decline in 2020, primarily due to the pandemic. Fuel sales have gone back up since then, but in 2024, it was still around 5% lower than in 2019. The next major source of emissions come from buildings, mainly from burning natural gas, but also electricity and other sources. The city is making improvements to its own facilities where resources allow. City Hall received HVAC upgrades, and gas heating systems were replaced at 2 fire stations. Thanks to a new policy, we also require low carbon concrete for all capital projects, which helps to reduce emissions from high impact construction materials. Renters and homeowners continued to receive free home energy scores through the SCORE program. This is a partnership between the city, U of O, and eWeb, and we actually received an award for this collaboration in June. Unfortunately, due to UO budget reductions, the program is on pause. Finally, thanks to eWeb rebates, over 1,200 heat pumps were installed last year to provide clean, affordable energy for heating and cooling. Homes for Good, in partnership with Northwest Natural, also installed ground source heat pumps in 12 low-income homes. Tracking our use of electricity over time helps us measure our progress here. Even as Eugene's population has grown, as indicated by the green line, electricity use has seen a modest decline, as shown by the blue line. This is good news because it means that there is a strong focus on energy efficiency and conservation as demand grows. To prevent waste, the city and our partners are promoting citywide composting and recycling, as well as expanding regional infrastructure for waste recovery. Roughly 200 businesses are participating in the commercial compost program, which is then sold along the West Coast. Residents can also compost by putting all their food scraps directly into their yard debris bin. The city is doing outreach on the new Recycling Modernization Act, which has expanded the list of materials that can be recycled. And the city hosts Fix-It fairs to promote reuse and repair of consumer goods. To date, these fairs have saved over 3,000 pounds of items from the landfill. What our data shows is that with the help of these programs, we are now recovering about 53% of waste that's generated countywide. This is the highest diversion rate in the state, so we are very proud of that. And even as we are producing more waste, as shown by the blue line, we are actually maintaining a steady percentage of waste recovered, which is the green line. Finally, we have a range of strategies to help our community adapt and become more resilient to climate change. The new Urban Forestry Action Plan provides a roadmap to expand our urban forest to improve air quality and reduce extreme heat, with a focus on neighborhoods with the lowest canopy coverage. The community emergency response trainings have been successful at training community members to help support first responders and respond in the event of an emergency. And this year, eWeb opened the 7th emergency water station. So this is a resource where people can access clean water during an emergency. So there's been a ton of work accomplished. And through a lot of the work that I just shared and more, we are proud to say that our CAP 2.0 is currently 67% implemented. Many of our completed actions include ongoing programs that continue to evolve and grow. What this reflects is the foundational work happening across the city and the community with our community partners to reduce emissions and create a more sustainable future. Despite this progress, we are not quite seeing large enough reductions in our emissions to reach the goals that Council established through the Climate Recovery Ordinance. For our community-based goals, we've seen an 11% reduction in fossil fuel emissions. We still need to cut an additional 39% in the next 4 years to meet that 2030 goal. And a quick correction to this graph that was just found this morning, that 11% reduction was noted between 2010 and 2021. 2021 is the most recent data we have for community emissions. In terms of city operations, the city is actually making more progress. Since FY10, fossil fuel emissions have decreased by 24%. An additional 26% is needed to reach our goal. The city purchases carbon offsets to cover the remaining emissions to meet our carbon neutral goals, and we spend roughly $50,000 on these offsets each year. So zooming back out, we are making measurable progress on our climate goals, but we are not quite on track to meet all of them. Unfortunately, we also face pretty steep challenges now that will make our progress more difficult. I'm going to talk about them, and then I will share a few opportunities. Basically, we are facing challenges at all levels of government, with some major headwinds coming from changes at the federal level. The administration has rolled back the Inflation Reduction Act, Locally, this has impacted state and regional climate grants. It also means that key tax credits will be phased out. A second major federal challenge involves the rollback of state regulatory authority, which has caused Oregon to put several key climate-related policies and rules on pause. Finally, the EPA is proposing rollbacks on several environmental regulations that are foundational to some key state policies that we depend on to meet our emission reduction goals. Shifting to state challenges, major reductions in their budget has constrained the ability to sustain existing climate programs and launch new ones. Funds were not renewed for some key programs, including for heat pump incentives, an incentive navigator program, resilience hubs, and electric vehicles. And finally, in Eugene, we've obviously been dealing with financial challenges as well. A lot of programs saw reductions within the general fund, including in the sustainability program, which hinders our ability to move this work forward. We consistently heard through our engagement that the community wants incentives to make energy upgrades to their homes and buildings. This is now more difficult because some of the federal and state challenges I just mentioned. Despite this, we continue to find ways to move this work forward. At the state level, there are 3 major programs that will continue to support our local climate action work. The Climate Protection Program will require large fossil fuel sources to cut pollution. It will also unlock significant funding for local emission reductions projects. Next, Oregon's new building performance standard rules are in effect, and this will help commercial buildings measure and reduce their energy usage over time. Finally, the state has so far held on to a nearly $200 million federal grant, which is adding funds to existing climate programs across transportation, buildings, and waste. Our local partners continue to be critical for moving this work forward as well. Just to highlight a few, LTD continues to be an active partner in providing bus and transit services. eWeb continues to offer rebates and incentives for home energy upgrades. And our critical community organizations continue to work tirelessly to raise awareness, focusing on equitable solutions and elevating environmental justice concerns. At the city level, our transportation system plan will be getting updated so that we can achieve the state's greenhouse gas reduction targets. The city continues to support compact development through our housing programs. In city operations, we continue to explore opportunities within our limited resources to electrify buildings and fleet. The urban forestry team is currently leveraging the 2022 street bond to expand street tree maintenance and plantings. And finally, and this will be a future action item for City Council, our team is currently working on a home energy score policy. A home energy score helps residents better understand their energy use, and it can be a roadmap for them to voluntarily make upgrades to their homes. The proposed requirement would be for sellers to disclose a home energy score when listing a home for sale. We are currently doing engagement and research and plan to bring results to City Council in Q1 of 2026. So these are just a few key project areas, but many other programs also continue. And in summary, I recognize I just shared a ton of information. A few key takeaways are that immense work has happened to implement our CAP 2.0. This work is laying the foundation of programs and policies for a more sustainable future. While we've made progress, we are not on track to meet our climate goals. This work has often depended on a patchwork of federal, state, and local climate policies and programs, many of which have now been reduced or no longer exist. As a result, the gap between what we're doing now and what's needed continues to grow. To address this growing gap and maintain our momentum, we must find ways to secure sustained long-term investments in climate work, even as funding becomes more limited. We understand there are a lot of competing priorities, and we hope this information is timely as the City Council considers its long-term financial needs in the coming year. So thank you for your time. We would now love to hear your feedback and questions so we can understand where you are at.
Thank you, staff, for that presentation and update on years of important work. I now open the floor for council discussion and see Councilor Zelenka, and then looks like Councilor Ye, and then Councilor Keating, and then Councilor Kaczynski, and Councilor Gross. I have a whole fleet of you now. Councilor Zelenka.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to compliment the sustainability staff, Ian and Danielle in particular, and the other city staff for this report and actually getting and supporting the intent and specifics of what I call the climate framework that we've put in place, and taking all this action. In particular, the home energy scoring, that's been a long time coming. Eager to see that come up beginning of next year. But it wasn't always the case that we saw this kind of action, this kind of support. History and context, I think, is important here. The reason I proposed the original climate recovery ordinance was because we faced strong public input to do something and to take action, but we're not seeing action by staff. But even after council action, and putting the CRO, after the council put the CRO in place, still didn't see a lot of action. And that prompted me and others to put together a clarifying motion, come up and amend the CRO to come up with a CRO 2.0. And even with that clarity, we still didn't see much action toward implementing the CRO. And that's why I worked with former Mayor Piercy and then with Mayor Venus to create the ad hoc committee and to jumpstart the action with staff to help create the CAP 2.0 plan. And so on top of that, we were not seeing staff integrate climate into their everyday work as much as we wanted to see. And that's why we proposed having our two big investment plans, the transportation system plan, which invests millions of dollars in our transportation system, and our capital improvements plan, which invests millions of dollars into all of our other infrastructure in the city, and to make both of those support and complement the CRO goals and be consistent with the work that's happening and proposed to happen in the CAP 2.0. So all of those motions were made and intended to spur action by the city and by the community, and to create this policy infrastructure, which I call the climate framework, to enable action so that we could get to where we are today. It's taken a long time to get there, so I'm super thrilled to see progress, this progress report, and all the actions that we've taken to combat climate change. So I applaud the staff's efforts and the action that we've taken. I do think this work is extremely important. I'll need a second round, but I wanted to point out that activity indicators of 67% of the actions done is fine, but that's not what we're talking about, and shouldn't be what we talk about. We're talking about greenhouse gas emission reduction. So that's the metric that's important here. We could complete 100% of our actions and not meet our goals, and so that would be a bit misleading if that were to happen. I'll need another round, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ye.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Mayor. And thank you, staff. Thank you, Danielle, for coming and presenting today. These updates are really important. I'm sure it's a little hard to not be able to bring a full good news, but I think having an accurate picture of where we're at, and that we, while we're making progress, we're not where we hoped we would be, is really important. And anytime you make plans like this, you're not sure if you're going to reach your goals. So that's just a part of the process, and constant reassessing and reevaluating. And sometimes you make a lot of progress at the end rather than at the beginning. So I really appreciate getting this feedback. Some of the policy changes we're seeing at the federal level that you're sharing with us and with the community today are very concerning, and being in a community where I feel like we're ahead of the game in some senses, in that we have already taken it upon ourselves to think about this area and how we can make local change on our own without, relying on other folks. And I think we're in a good position, even though we have some financial challenges. I guess I'm not sure what questions to ask you to make a really good impact today. I think it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, so maybe I'll tell you what I'm hearing, and you can tell me if that's right or not, that where we're at is that we have some really great ideas and some really great partners, and we've done a lot of good research about the steps we need to take. But at this point, it's really a funding issue for us to be making progress.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have done a lot of great work. That has been implemented. I think at this point, to continue moving the needle at the pace that's needed to reach the goals, it is largely a resource issue. I mean, and especially based on some of the feedback that we've gotten from the community, they want support in making these changes. It does kind of boil down to, like, if we want incentives, we need money to be able to provide those incentives. And a lot of the incentives that did exist are now going away. So, like I mentioned, that gap has widened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really unfortunate, because we've seen broad support for incentives in our community from folks from all different, political spectrums and walks of life. So that is disheartening to hear. Well, thank you very much. Again, I really appreciate you being here, and I'm looking forward to hearing what my colleagues have to say.
Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I submit that the whole fleet of counselors, the plural, the new mayoral plural of counselors, would be a whole green fleet based on the report from Danielle in regards to the city making far more strides in meeting our carbon neutral goals by 2030. I'm encouraged by that, but I'm troubled that we're so far behind on meeting our community-wide goals. So as one of many in the whole green fleet of counselors, I'm going to start my comments and questions with expressing my enthusiasm for a policy that ensures that sellers disclose the home energy score at a time of sale. I think that is a sound policy worth exploring that will make a significant impact. I'm concerned about the home energy score program at the University of Oregon being on pause because of budgeting. And my questions revolve around what that line item looks like. What's a dollar amount that we could wrap our head around? Broadly, what's the impact of the university pausing that program on the city of Eugene? And how, if at all, can we backfill resources for that program in the event that our partner at the university continues to make it less of a priority than it seems to be at this juncture?
Thank you, Councilor Keating. That's a great question. For those who aren't aware, the Home Energy Score program at U of O is a program that trains U of O students to become certified energy auditors, who can then provide free home energy scores to renters and low-income homeowners. And currently, well, up until now, the city has been providing a modest amount of money to help pay the students. But the administration of that program and, oversight was largely led by U of O staff. And so with the budget reductions they just faced, that decision was made to pause that program. Part of our research right now that we hope to bring to council next year is, like, what is that dollar amount to cover for free home energy scores to low income and homeowners and renters. So part of that research I think we'll bring back to you in next year. And we also see that program as having brought tremendous value and complementing a potential policy if the city were to move forward. So that's a gap we would like to better understand better as well. And Ian, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add.
If I could just add a couple quick things to that. Councilor Keating, thank you for that question. I think in terms of the immediate impact of this program, and Danielle can correct these numbers, but I think last year, so again, the students are the leads doing this work. And I think last year they did about 100 homes. And so, that's about the number of homes that are actually have audits done in a given year. I will say that the 3 partners involved in this program, we continue to discuss and try to find ways to keep this program running, just possibly running it out of a different organization. So those conversations continue. To do that would be relatively modest. I could probably cover that under the existing program budget to try and keep that going. And I think it's trying to figure out where that program would live and how to administer it. The university staff did a really great job of actually managing and administering this program, and is trying to fill that role that we're trying to sort out right now. But currently it is on pause, and we're trying to figure out ways that we can bring it back, because we do think, even though it's small, it's actually really impactful and an important program in Eugene.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Councilor Krasinski.
Thank you, and thank you, Danielle, for the presentation, and for all the work that you all are doing to help reduce our climate impact in our community. The question I had surrounded the mismatch between how far we've gotten in achieving the actions in the climate action plan with achieving the goals of the climate ordinances. And so am I correct in assuming that if we wanted to achieve those goals, we would need to identify additional actions beyond what is in the plan in order to actually get there? Is that a fair assumption, if we're 67% done, but with the plan, but not as close to our goals?
Thank you for that question, Councilor Krasinski. I think that the short answer is yes. And I think even, and the cap was done before Danielle or I existed in these roles. So some of the nitty-gritty detail, there are probably others on this call who have more of a sense of that. I don't think the cap was ever going to get us all the way there. I think there are going to be gaps anyways as part of that process. But it was gonna make a lot of progress towards that. I think I've answered it in 2 ways. I think one, a lot of the work that's being done, and Councilor Zelenka spoke to this, is just the foundational work through things like the TSP, through things like some of our other plans, to put in place the infrastructure, to put in place the roads, to put in place EV charging infrastructure, to put in place active transportation, all of those things that provide facilities that we're hoping the community is going to use. And then I think, I won't speak for my colleagues, but I know our transportation planners are working really hard on social marketing campaigns and other things to try and encourage some of these mode shifts and some of these changes that we're looking for. Sometimes there is a lag, right? Like, it's a little bit of field of dreams. If you build it, we're hoping they're going to come. But I also think we're trying to figure out ways in which we can get people to use these facilities. But yes, I do think that there would be additional things that we'd want to look at. I think one of the things that we'd want to think about is, the climate protection program, for example, didn't exist previously. And so how that folds into kind of these longer term goals and other state regulatory programs, either helping or not helping because they've been put on pause, would be part of kind of a larger consideration of what else might need to be done to help try and advance these, towards these goals at a greater scale, at a greater pace.
Okay. Thank you. And then my second question has to do with the funding question. I noted that a large percentage of our programs that are complete, or actions that are complete from the plan, were programs that are ongoing and are expected to have sort of ongoing impacts. I'm assuming at least some of those programs also require ongoing funding. Are we seeing funding for specific Eugene programs? Like, are we seeing programs that are going to have to end, that we've already sort of said, we did this, yay, and now it's going to stop because of these other funding pieces?
So I don't know if I have a specific example that would be speaking to your question, Councilor Krasinski. I think a lot of the big moving pieces are things that are ongoing funding, right? So our TSP a lot of that work is funded through the street bond. The new transportation bill is going to fund a lot of infrastructure work at that level as well. I would probably need to go through specific actions to understand if there are specific things that would no longer happen there. I think maybe one example, and I think staff have talked about this, is the street bond funding for street trees is really important. But if we wanted to meet our canopy goals, that the resources that are available there probably aren't sufficient to meet our 30% canopy goals. It's a great start. We're investing in really important neighborhoods of the city, but there are probably things like that would be specific areas where the existing funding, we're trying to leverage that, but it probably is, the price tag that would be needed to accomplish the goals is probably bigger than the funding that's available for the program.
Okay.
And I think the only thing I'd like to add is, the UO program is one example where, these big reductions are being made across all of our agencies' budgets, and where decisions get made about which programs get put on pause. Like, I think a lot of that is going to be ongoing as we see, these impacts roll out.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And I do think that if we're starting to see sort of backward progress from some of these actions, because we're having to scale back on things because of these funding challenges, I would definitely like to know about that and to hear about that. So thank you. And thank you for all the great work that you've done over the years. The successes have been pretty impressive.
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Danielle, for the presentation. And thank you, Danielle, Ian, and the Sustainability Commission for your work on this. I was actually quite surprised and pleased to see that our electricity consumption has gone down. One of my concerns all along has been our electric generation capacity is not infinite. And I've talked to people who think you just plug into a wall and it's an endless supply, which just isn't true. But that's good news, because that's giving us some headroom as we continue down this path. Do we have any idea of how the percentages shake out on that reduction? I'm sure it's a combination of up-to-date equipment that's more energy efficient, and I'm sure part of it is weatherization. Do we have an idea of the percentages of each?
Thank you for that question, Councilor Groves. I do not have that data at my disposal. That's probably something I could track down. I'm sure eWeb tracks that, but I don't know the breakdown between their various types of conservation programs and what may have driven those changes.
Thank you. I am interested in that. I wouldn't expect any extraordinary efforts to get it if it's not easily accessible, but I still think weatherization, although certainly with the cost, is one of those areas that, regardless of your type of energy that you're using, is something that helps the overall picture and the climate of this work. So I am interested in that. And I will also add that a lot of our lowest cost rental properties are some of our least energy efficient. And so, if we can figure out a way to help property owners and landlords invest into their properties, there's a direct benefit to the population. And then the last thing, and I know there probably is not an answer to this, but I know with some of these requirements and the fact that housing cost is already a significant issue in our community, do we know how much cost in the way of a percentage we are adding to the cost of construction, or, working on developing our housing inventory?
Related to what?
Related to some of the construction that's going on for low-income housing and affordable housing, those two areas especially, but I mean really for all housing, and what we are doing to the percentage, because obviously it costs more to do some of this work. And I just think that's information that would help us as we move forward and figure out how do we minimize any increases.
So I think it's probably helpful to look at this in two different ways, Councilor Groves. And I think one, for existing construction, it is a much more complicated problem because a lot of the challenges are baked into the building. And if you're going to do things in there, whether it's fuel switching or more efficient things, there is a cost. And I think for me, the way to look at it is, if your furnace dies, you're going to have to replace it anyways. So what is the marginal cost difference between replacing the system with a like system versus a more energy efficient system? I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. We probably have that somewhere. I probably want to talk to Energy Trust of Oregon and some other folks to understand that. There is data that suggests that when you're starting from the start, there can be cost differences if you're planning from the beginning on what you're actually doing. So if you're bringing, a single energy source versus a dual fuel source into a home, there are cost differences because you're bringing electricity in a home regardless, because you can't run your fridge off of, other fuel sources. You're running it off electricity. And there was some research done by Rocky Mountain Institute for the city a couple of years ago that talked about, for some of those, for single family homes, for duplexes, for other things, there can actually be cost savings in that front. It gets more complicated when you're talking about multi-unit construction. I don't have good numbers off the top of my head, but I think focusing, it's going to have a very different answer for new construction versus existing construction. And I think it's widely acknowledged that for existing construction to do the weatherization and to do other things is expensive. It costs a lot of money to do it, and you're hoping that investment pays off in terms of energy savings, because you want to actually do the intervention that's going to actually accomplish the goal you're trying to accomplish. But I don't think we have good granular detail on what that's done, mostly because it's not a requirement that we have here. So we have anecdotal data that's available from people who've actually shared what they've been able to experience in that. So for example, the SCORE program with the University of Oregon, we have some anecdotal data from the houses that have actually taken that information and actually done things in their homes. But I wouldn't call that representative. It's just anecdotal based on the couple hundred of homes where we've done this work.
Thank you for that. And I should have been more clear. When I was referring to housing, I was actually thinking multi-unit housing. Okay. I mean, we just got finished talking about a big one,
right.
And what that does to the price point for people with lower income levels. Thank you very much.
Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Danielle and Ian, for all of this work. And I apologize that my voice is a little shaky. I'm not very articulate today. I'm still battling this migraine. So I'm doing my best. But I just think it's really incredible with all of the challenges that you have faced, we have faced in terms of the funding landscape, in terms of, even the legal landscape as we've tried to implement, some of these things to meet our goals, as much that you've been able to do as much as you've been able to do. And I think it in a lot of senses, yes, it's disappointing that we haven't reached some of these percentage decreases that we have in our goals. Implementing these projects does take a lot of time. So, I was really impressed. We've done 261 transportation projects to promote, biking and walking. And as those get built, it takes time for people to actually be using those, for the construction to be complete. And so I think we'll continue to see, more in effect over time on some of those pieces. But it's pretty clear that we're not going to have a lot of help, right? These bigger landscapes, the federal, national landscape. So I think it's just as we make all of these decisions and policy decisions and look at these projects and be able to make climate decisions on every level and be really mindful of all of the pieces that we're putting together. And so just always keeping that on the forefront. And continuing to look for additional local sources of funding. Of course, it's really tough right now in our budget. And so I'm really glad that we've been able to continue to have both of your positions, that you can keep doing this work. I do have one quick question that's just kind of in my mind is when I'm looking at this data and you said, even though the population went up, we've seen a decrease. And I think that's incredible. Did we, when we're writing the CRO and the CAP 2.0, did we use projections for population growth and urban development and, expansion of the UGB? Did we make those calculations in trying to determine what was an appropriate goal for a decrease?
I might defer to Councilor Zelenka because he was the author of this, but my understanding is yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes, we did. We used the PSU population forecast increase to do that.
Thank you so much for answering that, Councilor Zelenka. I will let the rest of my time go, but again, thank you so much for the presentation and the report. It was really interesting to read, and I hope that we can keep working away at these goals.
We have Councilor Zelenka and then Councilor Clark, and I'll add myself to the queue to wrap us up. Councilor Zelenka.
Sure, thanks. I just wanted to reiterate how much I applaud the staff effort that we've done and the significant progress we've made over 10 years. But the report also points out that clearly our work is not yet done, and we still have a lot of work to do. We have reduced our operational emissions by 1,765 metric tons of CO2, but there's still 5,500 more to get by. And we've reduced fossil fuel use by 11%, but we still have 39% more by 2030 to meet our goals. And we reduced community greenhouse gas emissions by 10%, but there's still 90% to go. So despite all of the current administration's hostility towards taking climate action, which I think is incredibly short-sighted, because it will, increase our energy costs. Some estimates are as high as 30%, create increases in climate damage from heat domes and air pollution and flooding and droughts and Doug fir die-off. We just saw a front page paper article about that. And we'll put our country at such a distinct disadvantage, competitive disadvantage with respect to the rest of the world, costing us thousands, if not millions of jobs. And that would accompany us being leaders in this space. But since we're going back to a 1960s energy policy, we won't see that. Hopefully we can recover from that. But so in that current context, that just makes the stuff that Ian and Danielle are talking about that much more important. And so 67% of our activity is great, but it's really about the emission reduction. So I encourage us to talk about it in that context. Matt, home energy score. The UBO is a small part of that. This is an Oregon Department of Energy program, and there are numerous other cities, Portland, Milwaukee, Hillsborough, Bend, have been doing this for a while. There's over 50 auditors in the state that know how to do this. There's a contractor with Earth Advantage that can help us. So bottom line, I think using a sports baseball metaphor, if we build it, it will come. And Randy, upfront costs are important, but the houses last for 50, 100 years. So the operating costs are much, much more significant for affordability and for low income people. And then finally, I'll just point out that my team at Odo is putting together the state energy strategy. It's going to be released on October 31st and on Halloween. And it talks about the what and the how of how do we achieve our clean energy future and how much cheaper it is to do that's the least cost path to get us to where we need to go, both to meet our needs for the economy and to meet our climate goals. So I look forward to that.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't mean to be rude in correcting my friend Alan, but it's actually a movie metaphor rather than a sports metaphor, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. Thank you, Danielle, for the
baseball movie.
All right, 601. Thank you for the report. I appreciate that very much, and Ian, and for the work. I wonder, it's important information for us to check in on and have. I appreciated the percentage, the understanding of the percentage towards our goal that we have reached with GHG. I'm wondering what kind of metrics we keep outside of that in the name of, like, do we measure at all in any way the amount of money that the city of Eugene in our annual budget has spent per ton of CO2 emissions or per GHG, whatever that you would percentage, whatever way you would describe that? Do we keep a metric of what we're spending to accomplish these goals?
That's a great question. I think to answer sort of the first part of your question in terms of what metrics we keep outside of the main two graphs that I showed you, we track a range of metrics across all of our CAP 2.0 categories, and all of those are in the dashboard. Things like gasoline sales, energy efficiency projects that are installed through our utilities, numbers of trees planted. To get at your second question, I'm not aware that we have an exact metric total overall over how much like each metric ton has cost to reduce. One thing that does come to mind is one of our best opportunities and sort of least cost reduction that we've seen is with the switch to renewable diesel in our fleet. That has been a very affordable way to get as big of a reductions as we've seen in our emissions from that action. And I think beyond that, in terms of like how much each metric ton is costing to reduce, we don't have that metric that I'm aware of.
Cool. Okay. The reason I asked the question is because if we're X% through to our goal and we have X% Y X plus whatever to go, I want to be able to estimate what's it going to cost the Eugene taxpayers in how we make budgeting decisions to complete our goal. And I'm looking for reasonable metrics along the way to be able to judge that, because there are competing goals in our budget for things that the city wants to do. And this is certainly important. But my question is, at some point, we're going to run out of the ability to send ambulances when somebody calls 911 because we're running pretty short on that. So at what point does the next dollar that we have available go towards ambulances versus greenhouse gas reductions? And I know that sounds like a trite question, but it is a real decision that the council has to make on a regular basis, is how do we put our limited dollars locally to best use? And I know you mentioned the $50,000 that we spend every year on purchasing credits, carbon credits, and so I'd be very interested in knowing how much money we spend on the program as a whole versus the amount of greenhouse gas savings or reduction that we've accomplished for the money spent. Is that something I can get from you, or does that require a council vote to get?
I might ask ACM Rodriguez to weigh in on this if he has a thought on this. I don't know that we've tracked it in the way I think you're asking this, Councilor Clark. I think I understand the question completely, and there are analyses that look at marginal abatement cost curves to figure out what is the cost of the intervention per metric ton reduced. I don't know that we have looked at it, certainly from the community perspective, in that way. And a lot of that is, we have progress, but the progress, Danielle mentioned the patchwork of regulations. So one of the things that we've seen is that CAFE standards for vehicles have increased. So fuel economy in 2010 was about 15% lower than it is now. And so the city has spent $0 there to do work, right? But we've seen, so it's a patchwork of things. So I think I'd have to think a little bit more about how you tease out that information. I think that would be much easier to think about from the city operations perspective, because we could say we pay X dollars for diesel, we pay X plus some money for renewable diesel, and we've gotten for that investment X. So I think we could do it for city operations. I think for the community-based piece of this, because we rely on state regulations and federal regulations, teasing out attribution would be very challenging for that. But I understand what you're asking for.
Is that a two-way street? Does what we take credit for also work that way as well?
Well, I think we're saying what the data shows us is here's the, when we look at our system boundary, which is our urban growth boundary, here are the emissions within that system boundary.
Matt, can you answer my question directly? Can I have that metric?
Councilor Clark, I think Ian got a little bit to the complexity. There are some things where we can directly measure how much we spent and how much we reduced. And when you get at a community scale, even what you brought up, it becomes more complex to understand what investment caused what effect. So I'm not sure we could give you good information on that, but there are a number of even potentially we might be able to work with partners like UWeb to see if they have data about investment versus reduction in energy use or other things like that. So
I know my friend Alan, I can see his hand, wants to say we actually made money instead of, but I'm looking at this from planning for the future. So that's why I'm looking for anything that we can attribute directly, locally, to monies that we spent of Eugene.
Thank you, Councillor. You're about 15 seconds.
I was pulling Alan's link.
Thank you. And councillors, like I also see you in the queue, and we are with just about 1 minute to go. I would also like to offer a few comments first. And so the first thing that I want to say is that always the biggest challenge with leadership is to keep focused and to keep attention on things that are important and on the work that is important. Also, I think this team, it's a fantastic example, Danielle, Ian, how you all are describing your ability to be incredibly efficient with the very, very, very small budget that is assigned to our sustainability work within the city's general fund. It's a small number for the impact, and also even, Ian, what you offered about the ability to work creatively to find ways to continue good work. Despite even more constrained resources and partners not being able to step in the same way. I think that's quite inspiring, and it's foundational as a value to the work that we have ahead of us with regards to sustainability. The other area that I just wanted to highlight is that having worked with the work group with the CAP 2.0, being a person who works within the realm of sustainable urban design and researches the way cities grow to be more green and more sustainable, it is work that we do at every scale in every project if we are seeking the financial benefit and the social benefit and the economic benefit of that work. And so to see the way that this work has been integrated with the city's work, at ongoing work every day at a very low cost, because we already have to do things like design streets and plant trees, to do that with the lens of sustainability and those outcomes attached is really important and a great expression of our community's values and our community's desire to see real return on investment. The other point that I think is important in this work when we're thinking about cost of living, quality of life, and our economic development goals is to come back to the points that Danielle raised at the beginning of her presentation around the importance of investments in our transportation systems and our public space. Because as we are thinking about wanting to be a place with a greater intensity of development and more opportunity, higher wages, more small businesses operating and thriving here, to be able to do that without having significant congestion means that we are thinking about ways that people can walk when it's close, they can bike when it's really pretty close still, they can hop on robust transit when they need to. And that connection is what allows for not just a reduction in emissions and pollution that we experience locally, but it allows for a household to save $13,000 a year if they don't want to own a second car just because they have to drive it to get to work. And that has real meaning when we're thinking about the just and equitable transition that is imagined within our community, and that our state and country and planet also need us to be thinking about. But the benefits of this work are local, and they're things that local households, people in our community get to appreciate. Councillor Zelenka, a very quick remark, and then I'm going to wrap us up.
Very, very brief in response to Mike. Great question, Mike, but it's only half the question. The other half of the question is, what's the cost of not doing anything in this space? How do you calculate the value of the deaths accumulated from the heat dome that we saw, which is clearly climate change, or the $1 billion in losses in the timber industry because of Doug fir die-off, which equates directly into lower amount and reduction in jobs. All of those other costs need to be incorporated into the cost of inaction needs to be incorporated into the other half of the question. It's not just how much did we spend, it's what happens if we do spend it or don't spend it.
Thank you. And I was just notified, Councillor Evans, I think having trouble seeing that you also might be wanting to raise your hand and make a comment. And then after your remarks, I'm going to wrap up our meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was trying to raise my hand, but my virtual hand wasn't working. My question it's very brief. Most of what I had to ask has been asked already. But I wanted to know what the net effect of the recent transportation package that was passed by the legislature, the governor's package, has on our CO2 program. What's the net effect?
I don't think we have a good sense of that quite yet. I think, there's going to be a lot. I think it's just passed and there's a lot of funding there. So I think it's going to support roads and other transportation things. I think there could be some challenges on electrification of personal mobility from that, but I don't think we have a good sense yet of what the net effect is going to be.
Because I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive, but I just wanted to kind of see, and then we can answer that at a later time or through email of what tools are available vis-a-vis that piece of legislation that could affect our greenhouse gas emissions in transportation. And maybe I'll talk to Councilor Zelenka about that offline.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Clark, I also see that you have your hand up.
Real quickly, I just
Thank
wanted to suggest to my friend Alan that I assume he's not inferring that those particular costs were incurred by activity solely from the people in the city of Eugene. And what we're talking about was on a local basis rather than worldwide. And I don't think what we're doing locally is going to solve the worldwide problem, although certainly we should do our part. I'm just looking for simple metrics on what it's costing us to do our part. So thank you.
Thank you, Council and staff, for this update and this discussion. Always appreciated. With that, I will say that this concludes our agenda for today and close the October 15th, 2025 City Council work session. Thank you all. We are adjourned.